Created several years back is now woefully out of date. So I thought I would start again with a new tutorial series on how to mod for FirePro in 2020 and beyond, hopefully. I don't think there's going to be any major changes unless something happens that I'm not aware of, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think FirePro is a big enough game to attract a bunch of random people to mod for it that haven't already been around, I guess. Um, so I'm going to start basically from scratch. If you have watched my old tutorials, a lot of this will be a repeat of stuff that you have already seen. Those tutorials are not completely useless or anything. They're just not something you can follow still. I'm warning you, the first tutorial here that I'm doing doesn't do anything that any user is going to want. It is essentially Hello World for FirePro. It teaches you how to set up a project, what you need to do in Visual Studio. It teaches you what a hook is, essentially. It teaches you how to use the ModPack features to access hidden methods and variables and fields. It teaches you how to use the ModPackDialog window, and that is about it, to be honest. So yeah, it's not going to do anything crazy like the old tutorials did where, I jumped you right in with making some stupid match or something, or animated aprons or any of that stuff. That's fairly advanced stuff. I probably should have not started the tutorial series with stuff like that the last time, to be honest. I guess I just kind of went balls in. And this time I'm going to try to avoid doing that. I want to walk people through how everything works. Basically from scratch. I'm going to assume that you have a tiny bit of programming knowledge, but I'll try to walk you through some of the basic C# stuff. If you don't have any programming knowledge, this series might help, but this isn't programming 101 or anything, so I'm not going to explain to you what the variable types are. I'm going to assume that you kind of have an idea of that already or can find it somewhere else. And with that, let's get going. I have a nice tutorial. I have the code up here, but I am going to show you how to do it from scratch, essentially. I'm just using this as a template for me so that I can sort of, I guess, copy it, because that's, how I'm going to do it. I'm using Visual Studio 2019. It is not a requirement that you use 19. I don't know why you wouldn't be using 19, considering that Visual Studio for personal use is free. So there's literally no reason that you can't just download the new version and use that. But if you have 2017 or 2018 or 2015 even, the tutorial should be roughly the same. Some of the menu options might be worded differently. They might be in different places. I'm going to leave that up to you to find. But if you're starting from scratch and you're starting new on modding, you're probably going to be using 19 because you probably didn't have an old version of Visual Studio on your computer. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do, and I'll put a link to the Microsoft Visual Studio download thing in the video description when I upload this to YouTube, because technically I'm streaming this right now. I am warning people who are watching in my Twitch, I do not have the chat open, so if you're typing to me, I can't hear you or see you or read your stuff, so you won't be answered. I'm only streaming this because it's quicker for me to record it or stream it to Twitch and then transfer it to YouTube than it is for me to record it onto my computer and then upload it to YouTube myself. It's just easier for me to do that way, and it requires less of my bandwidth, I guess. So, well, not really. Anyway, I just figured this would be easier on me because I don't have to sit there and wait for it to upload to YouTube. So yeah. Anyway, so you're going to open up Visual Studio, and it's going to bring up, I have it pinned to my hotbar, so I just did this, right-click Visual Studio, and it's going to bring up this nice window. You're going to want to create a new project, and it's going to come up, and you're going to want to select Class Library.NET Framework. You can see I have it over there. From the C#. This thing has all the languages that you can program for, that you have installed. You're going to want to select C# Windows Library up here, and it will give you all of those choices, and you're going to want to select Class Library.NET Framework and hit Next. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to name your project. So we'll just call this Hello World, since that's, or how about Hello FirePro World? Ooh. Technically, or traditionally, Hello World is everybody's first programming tutorial, I guess. Obviously your mileage will vary, but that's kind of the tradition. So that's what we're going to do here. You can just let it use the default location and solution name unless you really want to change it. I never ever click place solution and project in the same directory. I just don't see a point to it. It nicely separates everything. Everything's all good. So don't bother. The framework thing you will have to change. I don't know which one it defaults to. I think the most recent one, or 4.5 or something like that. You need to go back all the way to .NET Framework 2.0 because that's what FirePro was programmed with. If you use a later .NET framework, your mod will work, but it will break other mods. And it may break certain aspects of the game if things have changed. So your best bet is to not use later frameworks. Use 2.0. That way you do not screw anybody's game up. You don't get the patcher warnings warning you that the framework versions are incompatible. You don't freak users out. So 2.0 is what you want. .NET Framework 2.0, and then just go ahead and hit Create. It'll open up a nice new project for you. I always rename Class 1 right off the bat because I don't want it to be called Class 1. So you just go, you just click on it and hold it over it. It'll bring up the little rename thing. And I'm just going to call this tutorial. It'll ask you if you also want to rename your public class, the starting class. Hit yes. So now you should have something that looks like mine, where you've got using system collection .collections.generic, and using system.text, and then you'll have namespace hello FirePro World, and then a set of brackets, and between the brackets you'll have public class tutorial. And so if you've set everything up correctly, that's what you've got. We are now going to have to add references. You will add the same references to every project that you do. You need them in order for the code to know what you're talking about when you add things like when you start talking about FirePro objects like edit wrestler data or whatever. It has no idea what that is at this point. It hasn't been defined. The references hold those definitions, so you're going to have to add them. So we're going to go to Browse, and I have nothing there. I don't know why my Browse is not saving recent files anymore. But Browse, and then you're going to go into your FirePro directory, FirePro World, FirePro Wrestling W Data, Managed, and you're going to select Assembly /c#.dll. You are going to select ModPackDialog. You are going to select PWGRFramework.dll, and you are going to select UnityEngine.dll. And those are the four FirePro related references that you need. I always recommend hooking the ModPack, referencing the ModPack, it allows you to use all of the ModPack's utility functions, things like the menu button system, which allows you to add new menu buttons easily. The field access stuff, where you're not having to use the patcher's field access, which breaks arrays. So yeah, I feel like the ModPack has some more robust features for dealing with that sort of thing. So I highly recommend hooking it, although it is not required. The other three are 100% required. You cannot make a FirePro mod without those 3 DLLs. So we're going to hit, now we're going to go back up to assemblies, and this is just in the default thing. We're going to scroll down to system.windows.forms. The ModPack requires this one for the ModPack dialogues. So once you've got those, you hit OK, and they should appear over here in your references section. There should be new references, and you are good at that point for your references. Now we're going to come up here to using, which is more for convenience than anything else. You don't have to do this, but you'll have to type in the namespaces every time you need to use something. And we're going to go using, not user, using ModPack, using DG, which is the PWGR framework. Mike DiGiorno or DiGiovanni or something like that. DiGiorno. I know it's not DiGiorno. It's like DiGiovanni, I think. He's the creator of the ModPack. He called his namespace DG. So you'll have to use that one. And you're going to want to type in using system. Oh, I have to spell that right. System.windows.forms, and then we're good to go. So, like I said, the usings are really just for your convenience. It avoids you having to type in the namespaces every time you want to use something from that class or from that DLL. So, very, very friendly and convenient to just add them in from the get-go. If you get in the habit of adding at least ModPack and DG, then you're going to be good to go. So now we're going to create our first, Jesus, I can't talk. Doing a tutorial and I can't talk. We're going to create our first method now. The method is just going to display a dialog box that says Hello FirePro World. It is going to then display another dialog box which allows the user to choose things. And it's going to show you how to access the save file password that it uses to zip up, because all the save file is, it's a DAT file, but it's really just a zip file renamed. And so it's going to display the zip file password because that's a private string field in the save data thing, and I'm going to show you how to access private fields. And it's going to display a random what the MoveCraft, and don't worry, you don't need the MoveCraft DLC to do this tutorial, but it's going to display what the MoveCraft methods use to generate a skill ID. So it's going to generate unique skill IDs just at the user's click of a button until the user tells it to stop. So that's really what this mod is going to do. Again, this is absolutely nothing exciting that you're going to want to release to the public, but it will get you a pretty good understanding of how to access hidden values, because you're going to need to do that in most of your mods. So yeah, so we're going to start with we got to make a method. So here we are going to do a public static void, and most of your modded methods are going to be public static. The patcher requires public static methods if you're going to hook them in. So that is why we are doing a public static method here. Void is the return type. This returns nothing. It just executes the code within it, so it doesn't need to return anything, so it's just a void. Then we go ahead and name it. We'll call this hello world. It doesn't take any parameters, no arguments, so just empty parentheses, and we are good to go. So now the first thing that we're going to want to do is we want to access and store that the password to the string or to the zip file that I was talking about. We're going to want to make a local string value that will hold that information, and then we're going to want to retrieve that from the save data class. So I will teach you how to do that. We're going to go string, and then we'll call this zip pass, and then equals, and then here is the ModPack code to access a non-public field. You're going to type modpack.modpack.getField, and then the get field requires 3 parameters. It requires an object, which is going to be the class, or really the instance of the class that you want to retrieve the field from, the name of the field, and a true-false value of is this field static. A static field doesn't require an instance of the object, so it needs to know if it needs to look for an instance, or whether it's just or basically whether it's getting something straight from the object or whether it's getting something from the class of the object. Again, I'm not going to teach you what class and instance is. You should know this if you have any C# or object-oriented programming experience, so you'll just kind of have to, and if you don't, there are probably some pretty good tutorials on YouTube, so try that. Anyway, so the object we are trying to get it from is saveData.inst, because this is not going to be a public thing. We want to pass in the instance, and in saveData it's called inst. And once I'm done typing this in, and explaining it, I'll show you how I deduced that. Obviously, I just kind of know that because I've been programming for FirePro for a long time. But at one point, I had to figure that out, and I'll show you how I did that. The field that we are getting, I believe, is just called zip password, and it is a static value, so we're going to want to pass in true. And it's going to throw an error that says that it can't do this because getField returns an object and we are classing it as a string. So what we need to do is cast our object to a string. So you're going to, in front of your modpack.modpack.getField, you're just going to put in parentheses string, and that will turn whatever this method returns into a string so it can be properly saved in our zip pass variable here. And once that's done, we're going to go down and I'm going to show you the tool that I use to take a look at the FirePro code. It's called ILSpy. It's right here. I will put a link to this in the video when I upload it to YouTube, because you will also need a plugin, and I've had a few people that I've tried to show this stuff to have trouble installing it, so I'll just upload a fully working copy with the plugin already installed and everything. So once you are inside, let's get rid of everything here. We don't need any of this open still, and I'll show you how to open it up. So once you're in ILSpy, it'll be empty, or it may have like some, some of its own DLLs loaded up just so it's not empty. I don't know. I don't remember what the default state is. But you're going to go to open. You can do it through file open or this little open thing. And then you're going to go to your Fire Pro Wrestling World, Fire Pro Wrestling W_data, managed, and you're going to open up assembly/C#.dll. And once you have that open, you can go ahead and expand it. And Fire Pro has several namespaces inside of it. You don't need to concern yourself with any of these generally. Every once in a blue moon, you might use something from another one. But for the most part, you are going to be focusing on the one that does not have a name. It'll just have a little dash next to it. That's the global namespace. So you're going to open that up, and you're going to see all of the classes in Fire Pro. All of them. And there are quite a few, as you can see. And we're going to come down, and, I know that the thing that we're trying to access is in Save Data, so we're going to find the Save Data class. And then inside this class is all of its fields. And see, here is our zip password. It's a string. So that's what we're going to try to access. You'll notice that it is private and constant, which means that it is private and static and can't be assigned a value outside of what it's assigned on startup. And then we're also going to notice that Save Data has an inst, which is also the class. Anything after the colon in ILSpy is the class of the field, and you'll notice that Save Data has a inst field, which is sharing the class Save Data, and that it is static. So this is the one Save Data that gets loaded when the game is loaded. And you're going to notice that lots of fields have an inst or an instance in some cases. Generally, it's inst in Fire Pro. But you're going to notice that it has pretty much most classes that stay open or that are read from frequently have an inst. So usually when you are programming for Fire Pro and let's say you need to get move data, there is a class called Skill Data Man or Skill Data Manager that has an inst, and you're going to want to access skilldataman.inst and not just the base skill data class. Again, object-oriented programming, a lot of stuff that isn't static requires an instance. So this is just a quick way to access the instance that Fire Pro opened up when it started without making your own instance, which would pretty much wreck Fire Pro, so you don't want to do that. Anyway, so now that you've sort of got the idea of ILSpy, that's how we know that Save Data has a field called zip password, and savedata.inst is the version of Save Data that Fire Pro uses when it accesses Save Data. Alright, so now that we've got the zip pass, let's display it to the user. So for that, you are going to want to do ModPackDialog, and that's going to bring up one of the nice little ModPackDialogs that are more integrated into the game. They have the straight Fire Pro background with the red border, instead of just a really gross looking like Windows dialog box or whatever you want to call it, the message box. So this will integrate it nicer into the game. It will still minimize the window if people are playing on full screen. I don't know why anyone would play any games on full screen in 2020. Seems kind of silly. If you want full screen, just do like a borderless window and set the window to be your monitor resolution. I guess some people still use full screen, though. I'm not really sure why. So ModPackDialog dot show, and the show class or the show method for ModPackDialog takes there's two versions of it. One takes a string and a combination of buttons. The other one takes two strings and a combination of buttons. I generally use the one that takes two strings and a combination of buttons, although the second string is almost entirely useless. It will show up if the dialog box shows up in your taskbar. For most users, the dialog boxes don't show up in the taskbar, but I've had a couple of people that say that, or a couple of people that it does show up. So I tend to put the second string, which is the dialog box title, in I can't talk. Goddamn. I tend to use that just to be complete because it's required in a lot of other message box type things. So I do it out of habit. You don't have to. Again, it's totally superfluous for the most part. So, but I'm gonna do it here because it's habit. So the text would be, "Hello, Fire Pro World!" exclamation point. And then we're going to want to start a new line and display the zip password, just cause. We're going to say the password to the save data file is, and then I'm actually going to come back and put a $sign in front of this string. If you put a $sign before the opening quotes, it allows you to do this. If you put brackets in the string, it will allow you to just throw variables in there without having to use a string.format command. So basically, this is just a succinct way of doing string.format, and I like this better. So yeah, if you have to throw variables in, you might want to use the $sign, and that way you don't have to concatenate strings or use string.format. So we're going to throw in zip pass here. And then, yeah. So that's going to be what we do for the zip, or for the first string. And then for the second string, I'm just going to put in zip password. And then for the ModPackDialog box does take message box buttons, which is an enum that is part of the system.windows.forms class. So you're going to type in message box buttons dot, and then we just want an OK button on this one. It doesn't need to give the user a choice. It just needs to display it until the user wants to close it, which they can do by hitting the OK button. Then, so that's going to display that to the user in a nice little message box. The other thing that we said we wanted to do was create a dialog result and a loop that will keep asking the user if they want to generate another skill ID. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to use another ModPackDialog. .show. I don't think this one needs a $sign. I'm not going to use any variables in here. So we're going to say, would you like to show or like to generate a new unique skill ID? We'll call this dialog skill ID generation and message box buttons. And this one needs to have a choice. So we need yes or no would be the best options here. You can use any 2-button thing if you're offering a choice. However, I would definitely use ones that make sense. And we are actually going to, if you hover over the show method for ModPackDialog, you'll notice that it returns a dialog result. And so we're going to want to catch that dialog result in this case. We didn't need to in this first one because there's only one option. No matter what the user clicks, it's always going to return OK. And so we don't really need to do anything with that. We could just continue the the code. But for this one, we have a choice. So we're going to need to capture that choice. So what we're going to do is dialog result equals right in front of that. And so now what that says is capture the dialog result from the ModPackDialog.show method and store it as a variable called result. So then what you're going to want to do is create a loop. And this loop should say while result does not equal dialog result dot no, and then you're going to want to bracket it out. So you should have well result exclamation point equals is does not equal in C#, dialog result dot no, and then inside this is where we're going to we're going to generate an integer value that is a unique skill ID, and we're going to display that to the user, and we're going to ask them if they'd like to generate a new skill ID. So here's how we're going to do that. First thing we need to do is set up an integer. So we're going to go integer, and we'll call this skill ID equals, and then we need to generate the skill ID. So to do this, we're going to cast the results of ModPack.ModPack.Invoke Method. And Invoke Method is the method you're going to call if you want to invoke a private method in like a FirePro class that is private, so you can't access it. This will allow you to access it, and it will return an object that the original method would have returned. So in this case, our original method, if we come down here and look at the method that we're going to be calling, this is ILSpy again. So we're going to be calling tool setting info, which is where the Movecraft DLC stores all of its data. And you'll see here that it also has an inst, so we're going to be using that. And you'll see that it has a create unique regist ID. That is the one that we are going to be calling, and you'll see that it returns an int. So our when we invoke it using the code here, the invoke method, it's going to return an int as well. So we just need to capture that. So invoke method takes three parameters. It takes the instance of the object or of the class that you want to call the method from. So in this case, we are doing tool setting info.inst. It takes the method name, and the easiest way to do this, if it's something kind of silly or long like this, especially since there are some misspellings in the code here, is just to come into ILSpy, highlight it, copy it, go back to your code, put down your parentheses or your quotations, and just paste it in. And then it wants to know if it is static. And in this case it is not, so you say false. And then it requires the arguments for the original method. So if the original method took a string or an int or a bool, you would put that in here. The create regist unique ID does not take any arguments at all, so we're going to just say null. Null is nothing. So once we do that, we have basically captured a unique skill ID, and we can go ahead and display that to the user. So what we are going to do is we also want to give the user a choice if they want to keep going with this and just generate more skill IDs. I don't know why they would or what difference that would make, but why not, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to say result equals, because we want to change the value of the result so we can break this loop if the user doesn't want to continue. So we need to go ahead and capture that. And since we already have the dialog result and the while is checking the value of result, we might as well use that one. And we'll go ModPackDialog.show, and we're going to want a $sign in front of our quotations. So we got $, quote, quote, and in between the quotes we'll say your unique skill ID is, and then we put down the curly braces so that we can just type in skill ID, the name of the variable, and it will put that right in there. And then we'll go ahead and start a new line. My cat is just going batshit on my door. But, so yeah, unique skill ID is, and then, like I said, we'll do the new line, which is \n, and then we will go ahead and ask the question, do you want to generate another? Let's spell another right. There we go. And we'll call this dialog box continue, and we'll get the message box buttons of yes or no again. And so this will essentially generate an integer ID that will be used. If it was used in any way besides just displaying it on the screen, it would be assigned to a move. The number would be it would be unique, so that the game doesn't get confused with skill IDs. And then it would display this to the user and allow them to decide if they want to keep generating IDs or not. That's essentially all you need to do in this. I believe that I displayed two. Yeah, see, in my original code, I did 2 dialog boxes. That's totally unnecessary. You can do it in one, and that's what I did here. If you can condense things like that, it's probably best. My original code has it'll pop up 3 windows instead of 2. This will only pop up it'll pop up 4 windows in the original code. This will only pop up 3. The Hello Fire Pro World, it'll ask you the first time if you want to generate an ID, and it'll show you the ID and then ask you if you want to keep generating IDs. So 3 windows, 3 little dialogues will pop up here. The next thing we have to do is figure out how we want to put this in the game. Since this doesn't actually affect anything and isn't going to be useful, you don't need a match running for this to run. You don't need to be in edit mode or anything like that. This is just something that we're going to run right from the main menu. So the screen where you select exhibition, that sort of thing. So we need to come in here, and you can ask in the Discord, which I will include a link to in the description when I post this up on YouTube. But the Discord has a mod programming channel, and you can ask in there if you're unsure what the class name for a specific thing is. In this case, what we are looking for is called Menu Scene Manager, which is right here. And Menu Scene Manager is a mono behavior, which is a type of Unity object. And all of these mono behaviors have a method called awake, which will run, the code in awake will run when a new instance is created. So we're going to run this when the game creates an instance of Menu Scene Manager. So to do that, we need to create a hook. to create a hook, you're going to come above the definition for the method that you want to hook into FirePro. You're going to do a regular brackets, not curly brackets. So just the straight square brackets, and then between the brackets you're going to type in the word hook and then parentheses. And that should create something that looks like that. So the hook parameter, or attribute, I guess these are attributes technically, has a whole bunch of arguments that you can throw in there. Not all of them are required, but I'm going to show, basically this is going to cover all of the required parameters for, or arguments for hook. So the first thing you're going to want is to give it a target class. And your target class is going to be that menu scene manager that we talked about. The next thing you want to do is give it a target method. And we said that we want to put it in awake. The next thing you're going to need is an injection location. And this is just going to be where in the code does it hook. We're going to do 0, but I'm going to show you after I do this hook how you determine the location, which is one of the trickiest things about modding FirePro. So, don't be upset if you don't understand it or don't get it. You will eventually, and you can ask questions, and it will work nicely and be good. So, don't stress on it too much. If you just can't, I'm going to go over it and you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's fine. And then you're going to need injection or direction. And this will tell you whether, this tells the patcher if you want it to hook before or after the instruction that you named in location. 95% of the time you want before. Very rarely do you use after. But it comes in handy once in a while. I'm not going to say you'll never use it. It's really rare. So after you've got the hook, the injection direction, you are going to need inject flags. And in this case, we don't actually need any. So we're just going to go ahead and say none. But there are a lot of flags that you can use. Some things pass the calling instant. Like if we said pass calling instance, it would pass a menu scene manager to our code. So then you'd have to Hello World would have an argument that took a menu scene manager parameter argument. So yeah, but we don't need that. And then finally you have group, and this is going to be what is displayed in the patcher when you go ahead and patch it in. You can tidy these up and make them look nice and add descriptions, and I'll get into that in a later video. But for now, you're just going to call this Hello FirePro. You can put in whatever you want there. It's just a string. So, but yeah, so that's how to make a hook. You absolutely have to have target class, target method, injection location, injection direction, inject flags, and group. There are other arguments that the hook can take, but those ones are the meat and bones of using the patcher to hook into FirePro. So those are the ones that you will use pretty much every time you write a hook. So now I'm going to kind of show you how we determine where and whatever to hook. So you're going to come over here and find the method you want to hook in, and you're going to click it, and you're going to get a big thing of code over here that basically tells the, it's what the game is doing. It is the original code for FirePro, just decompiled and made ugly in some cases. This one is actually not that bad, but they can get pretty ridiculous looking. So you're going to figure out where you want, you're going to pick where you need to hook. some cases you'll need like a variable set before your mod, because your mod needs that variable in some way. But in this case, we don't need anything. We could hook at the beginning or the end. I chose the beginning because why not, right? So the beginning is 0. The end can be hooked onto just by typing an int .max value into that. If you go back here and just typed in int.max value, that would hook at the very end of the method. So though 0 and int.max value are really easy if you want the beginning or the end. But let's say, just for the sake of this explanation, we need to hook after, let's say, we need to hook after the select number is this right here, after the menu underscore scene manager dot select number is set for some reason. I can't imagine why you would need to do that, but let's say you did. So we know that that's what we're looking for. We're looking for menu underscore scene manager dot select number. So we're going to come up here into this plugin called Reflexel. It's a little gear up here in the toolbar. You're going to click that. And what you're going to get is a whole lot of basically MSIL code, which stands for like Microsoft Instruction Language. And this will have a big list of instructions, and these are more akin to like assembly than it is to like C# or C++ or any of that stuff. It is way nicer than assembly. It is just, I mean, it is not as difficult to read as all that. But what you're going to want to do is pour through this, and you're going to be looking for, luckily, if you hover over this opcode thing, it's going to tell you what they do, and you know that you want to find the code after a value is stored in that menu underscore scene manager dot select number. So you're looking for the store code opcode or store field. So if you look here, I just found one. It isn't the one we're looking for, but I found one. When you hover over it, it'll say replaces the value stored in the field of an object reference or pointer with a new value, and it is stfld. So that's what we're looking for. But we're looking, and then if you come over here into the operand, it's going to have the field that you're storing to. So we decided that it was menu scene manager dot select no. So that's what we're looking for over here on this side. We're just going to try to find that menu dot field manager or menu field manager dot select no. And here it is, store field. So, and it's storing here, and this is the value of 0 that you want it to store. So these kind of go down. So like this, it reads everything on the other side of the equal sign first and then stores it over here. So you've got the 0 here and then the store command here. But what we're really looking for is this non-labeled line here. We know that this is instruction 94. So we want to store it after this, we decided. So we want to store 95 before. And that's how that works. So we will be using line 95, and we will do it before the current line 95. So basically we're going to become the new line 95. And let's go up here and do that real quick, just to show you how that works. So we're going to put in 95, and we've already got before. So we're going to go ahead and build now. Project, we're going to build the solution. And it succeeded, of course, because there's no errors or anything. We're going to come up here. It's going to be in your repros directory, but if you gave it a custom directory, you'll have to find it on your own. I hot pinned my repros directory in quick access just to make it easy for me to do. And so we're going to go into here. We're going to find our hello fireproworld.dll. We're going to copy it. Control C. We're going to go into FirePro World, FirePro Wrestling W.data, and then managed. And you'll see here, if you look at mine, I pinned my managed folder. I recommend that you also pin your managed folder. You absolutely will be doing this a ton. You're going to paste it in there. I'm going to get rid of my old one so that it doesn't pop up a bunch of times. We are going to go here. And once it's pasted in, we're going to go back to our regular FirePro directory, wherever that is. I also pinned that. Good idea to pin that if you're doing a lot of programming. You're going to go into the patcher. And now your DLL should show up in the patcher. Here it is, Hello FirePro World. You're going to make sure that that's highlighted, and you're going to want to highlight your Hello FirePro. And you're going to go patch FirePro World. And it's going to do its thing. And then you can come back in here to ILSpy, and you want to go reload all assemblies. And if you go ahead and look here, you will see now that there is a tutorial.hello-world call right after that menu underscore scene manager.select-no equals 0 call. That means that once it gets to that point in the code, it will call our new method. And let's go back here and change this back to 0, just because we just running at the beginning. We don't want to interrupt anything that it's doing. So once you have done that, you go ahead and rebuild. And anytime you change a hook, you have to repatch. Or a method name. If you change a hook or a method name, or what the method returns, or what the method contains in its as arguments, you need to repatch, unless that method is not hooked. So yeah. So you're going to go ahead and get your FirePro World. You're going to paste it in. You're going to want to go into your repos. Bin, debug, FirePro World. You're going to copy it. You're going to go to your managed. You're going to paste it in again. You're going to replace it. Now you're going to go back to your patcher and repatch. It should already still be checked off. You won't have to worry about that. You just need to make sure to repatch it. And then you're going to come back here and you're going to reload it. And you're going to notice that this now happens at the very beginning of the method, the awake method, after you've refreshed. And that's what we want. So now I'm going to show you basically it in action, and then we are going to call this tutorial a day. So that happens before your menu scene manager pops up. So does this. There we go. You've got that. And now it's going to give you a, here is your message box. Hello FirePro World. The password for the save data file is, and then it gives you the password to the save data file, which is some random jumble of garbage. You're going to hit OK. And then it's going to ask you, would you like to generate a new unique skill ID? Let's say yes. Then it says, your unique skill ID is some long-ass number. Do you want to generate another? Let's say yes one more time, just to show you that this works. And then it's going to give you another one that's going to look very similar because it's based on your date and time. So, you know, your skill IDs are going to be similar but different. And then it's going to say, do you want to generate another? We'll say no. And then it will finish loading. So yeah, that is basically how to mod for FirePro. That's a really basic one. Again, it doesn't do anything that any user is going to want, but that did succeed in showing you how to access private fields, how to set up your project, how to write a hook, that sort of thing. And those are incredibly important skills. So the next time I do a tutorial, which should be shortly actually, I may do 2 today, just to get something up that people might actually want. I am going to show you how to write a real small mod that will basically turn the cages into exploding cages, so when wrestlers get thrown into the cage it will explode. But other than that, we are done, and I will see you in tutorial number 2, where we will be discussing exploding cages.